Now, I would never recommend Facebook over participation in a real community. But I think part of the appeal of Facebook is that it addresses a genuine human need, one that is often neglected in our culture. The need for a place simply to connect, to simply belong. The Facebook community does not ask for your credentials. You don't have to be productive to join it. It's remarkably open, remarkably accepting. Just show up, and you're welcomed, and you're invited to come in. Now, perhaps it should be obvious that such a description might also be applied to a faith community, to a congregation. Yet very often, our American focus on doing makes its way into the faith, and faith becomes about doing things. Faith becomes about making a decision, about believing the correct things, about living in the right ways, doing the right behaviors, and about a frenzy of activities and church programs. Some Christian communities can be remarkably strident about this, can demand that you believe just the way that they believe and act just the way that their rules spell out, or you're not welcome to be a part of that community. Now, certainly there are places where Jesus tells his followers to do things, to obey his commandments, to follow his teachings, and so on. But the image Jesus gives us in today's Scripture doesn't contain much in the way of doing, at least not on the part of the sheep. The shepherd calls, and the sheep, they recognize his voice. There's no litmus test involved. One merely need recognize the voice. It's not unlike another call in another gospel that Jesus utters, in the Gospel of Matthew. Come to me, all you that are tired and weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Rest for the tired and weary. Easy. Light. It doesn't sound very much about productivity, about doing very much. Of course, Jesus has scarcely risen from the dead when those who sought to follow him got into arguments with one another about how to do church. Now, some of these disagreements were about critical issues. What did one have to do in order to become a Christian? And those first Christians were convinced you had to do quite a bit. You had to first become Jewish. You had to take on the Jewish rituals and regulations before you could become a Christian. But the Spirit guided the church to remember that becoming part of Jesus' flock was mostly about what the shepherd did, and not so much about what the sheep did. And the church let go of that Jewish requirement. Now, it is difficult, perhaps impossible, to be a church without doing things in a particular way. You have to decide how you're going to train the pastors or not train the pastors. You have to decide what your worship will look like. You have to decide if the Bible is the final say or if the church can perhaps overrule the Bible. For that matter, you have to decide which Bible to use. And that's not simply a matter of which translation. You also have to decide if you use the Bible with the books in it that you'll find in the pew racks in front of you, or if it's a Bible with some different books in it, like you will find in the pew racks over at Our Lady of Victory. You have to decide. You can't simply be a generic church. You have to make some decisions, but it's not the decisions that we make that turn us into the church. that turn us into the Good Shepherd's flock. It is simply that the shepherd calls, and we hear his voice. Not all the sheep look or act alike. They come from different places, from different folds. As Jesus says, I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also. And they will listen to my voice. And there will be one flock, one shepherd. Here is the Lord's table, the Good Shepherd's table. And the Good Shepherd beckons you to come, to eat, and to drink, and find nourishment for your soul. And the shepherd does not ask if you are black or white, if you are rich or poor, if you are gay or straight, if you are upstanding or of low repute, if you are male or female, if you are citizen or immigrant, if you are PhD or high school dropout. The shepherd simply calls, and all who recognize his voice are his flock. Thanks be to God.